Hello again, Conte. Sorry if the audio setup is a little bit messy, if there's some background hum. I've moved back in with my parents because of job security concerns under quarantine. So yeah, the audio might be a bit weird, and that's the reason I haven't uploaded in quite a while. Videos will be a little bit delayed, so yeah, please bear with me. But let's not worry about that for now, because I have a pretty exciting video. I'll show you the set that I am running. As you probably gathered from the title and thumbnail, this is about automating the Steamworks fuel gathering from the guiding lands. As you can see, I've tried to keep things fairly reasonable in terms of decorations, nothing too crazy that you need. Air plugs is optional, just every now and then you'll lose a run if you don't have air plugs, if two monsters happen to spawn close to each other and are roaring at each other. But anyway, let me quickly explain something. So there are two versions of this macro that I've created. One is for people with fast load times, and one is for people who don't have an SSD who have slow loading times. If you have quick load times, it's actually faster to leave the guiding lands and come back. Whereas obviously if you have slow loading times, it's better just to wait for the ghillie mantle to fully recover with Tool Specialist level 5. So if you have the fast loading times and you're using the fast macro, then obviously Tool Specialist isn't important. And so yeah, just keep that sort of thing in mind. The essential skills for the macro will vary depending on which type you're using. For example, you don't need Tool Specialist if you're using the macro that resets and leaves the guiding land every time, because obviously you're not going to be waiting for ghillie mantle to recharge. And you won't need Speed Crawler if you're using that macro because it doesn't go through the tunnel, for example. However, it's fairly easy to get all the important skills on the set, so I've just kept them all in here regardless, and you can see the decorations aren't particularly difficult to get. I haven't used any crazy level 4 stuff. The air plugs charm is sort of not essential in either macro, just because you might occasionally lose a run if two monsters happen to spawn really close to each other and are roaring at each other. That's the only reason I have air plugs decorations, because we're going to be ghillie mantled up regardless, so you're not going to be getting roared at. Oh, and I do want to mention, I'm not going to be going over how to get the macros working for PS4. I have videos on that. I'll have them linked in the description. For other macro videos, I've gone over it like 6 or 7 times in the past. So a quick rundown: you want PS4 remote play, which allows you to control your PlayStation via your laptop or a mobile phone. And then you want to download PS4 macro, link in the description, hopefully, which allows you to then funnel inputs into remote play by recording your inputs. And then what you want to do is download the macros that I have linked in the description and run them in PS4 macro. Look up tutorials for PS4 macro, just generally if you're having trouble getting it to work, or DM me on Discord or something. We've had a few people who've had troubles that we've been able to resolve. So just some general stuff. For both macros, you're going to want to make sure your cat is with you. Then, before you actually start running the macro, you'll want to head outside and use the tail raider signal if you have it unlocked. If not, make sure you go and do all the other cat stuff, because the rate at which the two cats gather is actually quite substantial. And so you'll give yourself a big boost to your drop rates if you take the time to unlock this. But yeah, you can see we've gotten a cat and a tail raider. Now what I like to do is go into the base camp, because the tail raider's collision tends to get in the way while I'm navigating towards mining nodes. So I like to come into the camp and then exit it straight away. And what that does is kind of shoos away the tail raider. So now you see we're only left with me and the two cats. The only other setup you need to do is get the ghillie mantle out. And again, this is for the slow macro for people without PS4 Pros or SSDs. Get out the ghillie mantle and fly back to Eastern Camp 3. It's important that you fly there. You need to be lined up, and it's sort of calibrated with this. Aside from that, just make sure that in your map you have it set to, out of all of these options here where the icons that get shown, have it set to hide all. Zoom out as far as possible. And that's all the real setup you need to do for the camp. Now regarding options, I'll show you mine quickly, and this will be the same for both macros. What I'll do quickly is just show you every single option I have in rapid succession, so just pause it and make sure they're all the same as mine. And then I'll talk to you about the specific important ones. First things first, I think there's a difference between the sort of type of console you have, whether X or circle is confirm or go back. I think it in Asian countries it's different, so that might be an issue. Additionally, I have R1 and R2 swapped over. So my sprint button is mapped differently, so make sure you've changed that too. I don't know if there are any other options that are important. There probably are, but yeah, here are all of mine. So I've showed you them all. Just yeah, make sure you've tried them out if you're having any issues with my macro. So that is all the setup for the slow macro. All you need to do now is run it. So I'll let it play once. Hopefully I'll put a timestamp on screen, and I'm playing it, by the way. This is all happening automatically now. So we've equipped the ghillie mantle. What we do is we then jump off of this shortcut down here. Now it does go into the effluvium area. Both macros do, so you might want to throw effluvium resistance on the set. I haven't found that it makes a difference, but you know, if you want that for peace of mind, it's up to you. But yeah, so I'll put a timestamp to skip if you're using the fast macro, although I would recommend watching this because I'll explain some stuff. So yeah, we're gonna run now. The thing about PS4 macro is, first of all, make sure you're using wide connections. I'm not gonna go over, again, I think I've talked about this, but I'm not gonna go over how to get it running. But yeah, you can see it sort of drops inputs quite frequently, which is the reason I run into corners the way I do, to sort of line up and account for any dropped inputs. So what we do is you navigate to each of the 4 possible mining node locations and mine them 3 times. This uses an exploit from a previous video where if you mine 3 out of the 4 mines that you get because of Geologist, the gathering node doesn't progress, and so it stays red permanently. And so you can see these gathering nodes will remain as red, and so I can get the Dragon Vein Coal, which is I think 500 steam each. Yeah, that exploit is pretty essential, but you don't have to worry about it. You're just running the macro and it should take care of it itself. Oh, but you should get these nodes to red before starting the macro. That's another thing I didn't mention. Now the other thing is I have no way of knowing where the mining nodes have spawned, so I just kind of assume that all 4 are occupied so we don't miss any. Yeah, there's no real cleverness to distinguish. You can see I'm lining up with the corner again. Oh, we got a reset, I think. The mining nodes reset halfway through my explanation, which is the reason it seems like there's more than 2. Don't worry about this when it happens. There's nothing you can do to take advantage of it, and it might mess up a run or 2, but it's not going to throw the macro off completely. And yeah, there's 1 mining node left, so we'll go and try and gather it. Now you can see the cat's been gathering, and even the sort of tail raider or the additional cat. Again, they make quite a substantial difference. Now the only other point about this macro that I think is quite important to mention is that it does not sell in your items. It doesn't report them. So you will eventually max out at 99 Dragon Vein Coals in your inventory if you leave it overnight. I found that it takes roughly, I think, 8 or 9 hours, although I don't know the exact numbers. So yeah, be sure. I could put something in to trade items in, but then because I'm trying to make a macro that works consistently for everyone, those kind of inputs are the most likely to get dropped and confused. So I decided to ignore it for now and just, yeah, if you get to 99 fuel, make sure to sort of put your items away into storage. You can do that at the base camp. So yeah, it uses this trick where it uses the map. That's why the zoom and stuff of the map are so important. Zoom out all the way, hide all the icons. It uses that to travel back to camp 3, at which point it removes the ghillie mantle, waits for it to respawn, and just repeats the process. And so that's really the entire macro. Hopefully that made sense. This will just keep looping until you stop it. And again, there is no giving away of the items. You need to once you get to like 99, make sure you swap them all in and store them. So I now want to talk about the second and faster macro. This one gets started slightly differently. You have to travel to the research base, and that's it. Now there is some setup that's quite important. You need to have your ghillie mantle and your tail rider set up on the radial menu in a precise way. And you can see here, by the way, here's the C3 codes from the tail. That's why I like to make sure I have it. But yeah, you need to have your radial menu set up in a very specific way, so I'll show you that in a second. So you can see I have an item set prepared for this, fuel macro it's called. The only important thing here is the radial menu. You can see I have 3 tail riders at the top. You only really need the top middle one, but I like to have 3 just in case the input gets messed up a bit. And ghillie mantle is on the bottom. Now, my actual radial menu options are different too. I have the option set so that you have to click the right analog stick to activate it. I'll show you the option that I'm talking about, so make sure you set this one too. I believe it's this one, radial menu settings, but again, I've showed you all of my options when talking about the previous macro, so just make sure they all line up with mine if you're having trouble. Now this macro is fairly easy. All you got to do is go to the research center, the research base, this area over here, and just start the macro and it'll do everything on its own. Make sure you have the item set taken with the radial menu set up accordingly, and then all you have to do is press play. And so you can see it navigates to the guiding lands, goes to Eastern Camp 3, and takes care of everything from there. You don't need to do anything. Now the nice thing about this macro is it's faster, because it doesn't have to wait for ghillie mantle. And it trades in the items automatically every time you leave, because all your items get stored. So you don't have to worry about reaching the 99 cap. On the downside, you have to summon the tail raider every time, which is fine, the macro does that for you, but it can be a little bit frustrating. And it's quite specifically sort of tuned to the loading times of a fast PS4, a PS4 Pro with an SSD. Now I've left a little bit of leeway in, a few seconds worth, because I found that was sort of a more consistent way to get it sorted. However, if you're trying this, if you do have a PS4 Pro and SSD and you're still having trouble getting the loading time in time, you might need to try the slower macro or message me and I'll see if I can make a better one. But yeah, this one takes a slightly different route. It takes one that seemed to be more consistent, at least in my experience for this particular setup. It sort of goes in the opposite order. Still does the exact same thing as the previous macro, where it lines up into corners and things like that. The other nice thing is that you won't have to worry about resets of the mining nodes halfway through, because the global timer resets every time you come into the guiding lands, from what I can tell. But yeah, it's all pretty standard stuff. It's just going to mine every node 3 times using that same exploit. And then what it'll do is it'll travel back to the research base. Now, a couple of things. In all of my time testing, none of these macros have failed beyond reasonable return. So occasionally they'll mess up a run, they'll miss all the mining nodes, but then after 5 minutes, given the sort of safeguards I have in place, they'll reset themselves so that they're able to keep going. So if you do leave them on overnight, they should, unless I've missed something or maybe it's machine dependent, they should be able to sort of keep going even though they'll have the occasional mishap. And the other thing is the drop rates. So with the faster macro, I tested it for I think 7 hours or so, and I had somewhere in the region of 220 coal. I remember my numbers averaging out to around 16,000 fuel per hour, which is kind of fantastic. And again, because you don't have to worry about the 99 cap limit with the fast macro, if you leave that on for, let's say, a 10-hour night, that's more than 150,000 fuel idled overnight completely, which is pretty good. For the slower macro, it's a lot more variant depending on like how your connection holds up. I've had it range between sort of 9,000 to 15,000, averaging somewhere in the region of like 12,000 an hour, but it really will depend. Still pretty good numbers in my opinion. Again, a 10-hour night at 10,000, even the sort of on the lower end of the estimates, that's still something like 100,000 fuel a night, which is pretty good in my opinion. But yeah, those are the drop rates. The macros should go off by themselves. Please, if you have any issues working the macros, let me know. Either comment or preferably like DM me on a social media, Twitter or Discord or something. But yeah, that's all I really had to say, so I think I'll sign off. Okay, so to all 6 people who made it this far into the video, thank you for watching the whole way through. I really appreciate it. Standard signing off stuff. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this helped. Again, yeah, just DM me if you're having any issues. I do want to say something extra though. Given the job security concerns that I've had, and you know, the whole moving back in with family stuff, I've decided to open a Patreon account. Please don't be angry. I'm financially stable. I am not at risk of being homeless, so do not fear and do not spend any money unless it's completely disposable and you are financially secure. But yeah, I did think I might as well sort of bite the bullet, swallow my pride, and do something like this. So yeah, feel free to pledge if you're interested. I don't really know how to set it up. Maybe I've done some tiers by now, or maybe I haven't even created it by the time this video goes out. But anyway, either way, I love you all. It doesn't matter whether or not you can support. It's all good, and I hope you have a lovely day. Take it easy. Bye bye.